Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be explaining how we answer the questions on paper 2. For those of you who aren't part of the WHP Trust and you may happen to be watching from elsewhere, we follow the Edexcel course, and the topics that we study are the American West and the Anglo-Saxon Normans. So those are the topics that I'll be basing this on today. So, for the American West section, the questions will always sound the same. Okay, there'll always be the same structure with regards to how they sound. The first part of the question will always be the same. Question 1 on this section will be explain 2 consequences of, and then there'll be an event or something like an event. Question 2 will have write a narrative account analysing. Okay, and question 3 will have explain the importance of something for somebody, okay, or something. Right, so let's get to the point. So the first question, explain 2 consequences of. I'm going to run through how you would structure this answer. So you might want to go along the lines of this. You can see here I've got 2 paragraphs, paragraph 1 here and paragraph 2 here. The exam paper already structures it like this for you. It will give you consequence 1 as a heading and consequence 2, which is very helpful to help you remember how to structure it. So I'd always start with one consequence is. Then I would, although it's a consequence question, I would look at why that happened. Okay, add a little bit of knowledge about where this consequence has come from, and then saying what the consequence was. So what did this mean? Okay, what impact did this have? Okay, make sure you're thinking about impact on maybe Plains Indians, on migration, on government policy, maybe any of key themes that run through the course. Then just do exactly the same thing again, making sure you choose a different consequence. Make sure it's very different so you don't overlap your knowledge with the first point. So key tips, remember to pick 2 different consequences and use specific knowledge about what happened after the event. Specific knowledge, names, dates, facts, things like that. Okay? Right, moving on. Here's an example. Okay? Explain 2 consequences of the discovery of gold in Colorado in 1858. This answer is good because it introduces 2 separate consequences. It increased tension, being 1, and the second consequence being the problem of law and order. These are clearly outlined right at the start of the answer, which is really, really good practice. Both sections give lots of specific knowledge. It gives knowledge here, such as the Oregon Trail. Naming the trails is really important, and that it broke the Fort Laramie Treaty. Okay, really important to name those things. And here we've got things such as claim jumping, which is a nice phrase which will get you marks for specific knowledge, and saying this led to an increase in violence. Okay, we're talking about the impact. Okay, it was made worse by the fact there was no provision for law enforcement. Okay, talking about the impacts, talking about what happened after. That's what it means by consequences. Okay, moving on. Right, a narrative account analysing. Not everyone's favourite, this one. Here's how we need to structure it, okay? Some people might say it's like a story. It's not a story, it's a narrative. We might say it's like a story in the fact that it has a start, a middle, and an end point. Okay, you're telling something chronologically, start, middle, end. However, these things need to be linked. So you're going to start by saying at the beginning of the time period, because it will give you a time period in the question. So at the beginning of the time period, what was it like? It will give you something in the question. What was it like? Okay. Then you're going to say what happened next. But you're going to link it together. So this led to, right? And then another phrase you might want to use, which meant that. And another one, as a result. And then at the end, you're going to say therefore, by the end of the time period, what were things like? Okay. How would we developed from this to this? What did we have at the end? What was it like at the end? So, key tips. Remember to write chronologically, not in PEE paragraphs or Peel or whatever phrase your school uses if you're not from WHP Trust. Okay, so here's an example. I'll let you guys read that at your own will. You can pause and read that, as you did with the other one, hopefully. And here we have a clear start point, okay? The question asks about how homesteaders solved the problems of farming on the Great Plains, and I've started by saying what those problems were. Okay, I've started by saying what those problems were, and then moving on to say how they began to be solved. Okay, I'm talking chronologically, so they begin to be solved. That suggests a start point. They begin to be solved. The Railroad Act, okay? Blah, blah, blah. That solves a problem, okay? Moving forward, these help the homesteaders solve their problems because, and we have it as a result of this, they needed to protect their crops, migrating buffalo and cattle. The fact that the railroads brought barbed wire with them meant that they could cheaply protect their crops, okay? We've got the end point, problem solved. Wonderful. Okay, let's move on. Last question on this paper, you will get 3 options for an explain the importance of. You need to pick 2. This is also structured in a 2-paragraph format, okay? 2-section format. You may want to write more than 1 paragraph for each section if you're a quick writer, but 1 lengthy paragraph would be enough. Okay, so here's a rough way that you might want to structure it, the bare bones, if you will. So, you start by 1 reason why blank was important was because. For example, giving specific knowledge. This was important because thinking about the importance of something. Okay? Another reason blank was important was because. For example, this was important because, again, thinking about the importance of it. So moving forward, when we're thinking about importance, we're thinking about these 3 things, okay? Is it groundbreaking? Is it long-lasting, the effects? Does it affect a lot of people? And what were the immediate effects of the people, okay? Those sorts of things would make an event important. So going back, some top tips for this question. Remember to write 2 different things again. Don't overlap yourself, okay? You might lose marks or might miss out on marks by repeating yourself. Show as much knowledge as you can. Remember to explicitly mention importance. Again, these ideas of being groundbreaking, long-lasting, etc. Right, so that would be the end of this section of the paper. You would have chosen 2 of these explain importance questions, and then you'll move on to the Anglo-Saxon and Norman's paper. Okay? So, in this section of the paper, you will be expected to, firstly, describe 2 features of something. I've included the question example that I'm going to do here, is the Norman government. The next question will always be, explain why something happened. Okay? And then the last question will be a statement, such as this one here in the quote marks, followed by, how far do you agree? Explain your answer. And we have a 4 mark, a 12 mark, and a 16 mark. There is a SPAG mark for 4 marks on this question, but I'm not going to concentrate too much on that. You just need to remember to have good SPAG. Okay? So question 1, describe 2 features. Step 1, you need to outline a feature. Step 2, provide specific knowledge about that feature. Step 3, outline another feature. And step 4, you got it, provide specific knowledge about that feature. So here's an example from the question that I've got on the slide here. Describe 2 features of Norman government. So it was under William's command. William was in charge of the government. Okay, that's our point. For example, he personally ordered the Doomsday Clock. So giving an example of how he was in control. He was able to just do what he wanted in terms of his orders. Okay? And then step 3, we've got another factor here. You had regions, such as Lanfranc. And they were needed when William was in Normandy. Okay, I've given a bit of knowledge saying that Lanfranc was one, and why they were needed. Okay, that would probably get 4 marks out of 4 for if that was arranged in sentences. Okay? Moving on. So, next question will be an explain why question. Okay? And for this example, I've given explain why changes in land ownership made resistance to Norman control less likely after 1071. So, we need to be focusing on explaining why. We're looking at causation here. So step one, we're going to identify a change in land ownership, because remember it's asking us to explain why changes in land ownership made resistance to Norman control less likely. So we need to say what changes actually happened first, don't we? That's our point in our PEE paragraph. Okay? Provide some knowledge about that chain. So we've got point, evidence, providing some knowledge. Step 3, explain how that change made resistance less likely. Thinking about our question, making sure we're answering the question and what it is asking to do. It's asking us to explain why resistance was less likely. So explaining why that change that you listed there made resistance less likely. Okay, so you've got your point, step 1, your evidence in step 2, and your explanation, linking it back to the question in step 3. So for example, one way in which land ownership changed under William I was that he created the Marcher earldoms. Okay? Point. Marcher earldoms was changed. Giving some specific knowledge here. Chester, Hereford and Shrewsbury. Some more there for you to read yourself. And we're starting with this sentence, look. The Marcher earldoms made resistance less likely. Making sure we're making it obvious to the examiner that is what we're answering. Okay? Right. Moving on. So, the last question you'll get on this paper, and you will get a choice again for this question, so choose wisely. And again, it's a statement followed by a how far do you agree. So, it's 16 marks. It's the most lengthy answer you're going to write on this paper. You're going to start step 1 by agreeing with the statement. Okay, you might want to use phrases like this. Some might agree with the statement because. Okay, give an argument or a point that supports that statement. For example, providing specific knowledge again. The more specific knowledge you get, the more marks you're going to gain. Okay, and then we've got an explanation here. Oops. Saying why this made the king more powerful. Okay, why it made the king more powerful. Step 2, disagree with the statement. Okay, I'm not saying you just do one paragraph for this. I've got a ×2 here, so you might want to do 2 paragraphs, or 1 and then 3, or 3 and then 1. But anyway, some might disagree with the statement because using these sentence styles to make sure you are answering the question. Okay? For example, providing specific knowledge again. And then you're answering the question because it's asking you to make an argument. Judge the arguments for and against. You're judging the arguments for and against. So you're going to say why that one, this argument, might be seen as more significant. Okay? Or if you're dead against it and you're just presenting both sides of the argument, you might say why it was less significant. Okay? Once you've done that for a couple of arguments for each side, you're going to move on to a judgment. And I don't like to call these a conclusion. Okay? I like to call them a judgment because you need to make sure you're not just summarising what you're said in the essay or in the exam answer. You need to make sure you're making a judgment, okay, on how far you agree. And I've given you some structure here of how you could write this sentence. In my opinion, I completely, mostly, partially, or don't agree with the statement. This is saying how far you agree. Make sure it reflects what you've presented in your argument. If you've given 3 really strong points that agree with the statement and only 1 weak point that disagrees with the statement, you need to make sure that you say you mostly agree. Okay, you need to make sure it reflects your argument. Last of all, you need to explain why. Okay, why have you chosen that? Why is one argument stronger than the other? Is it because without that one, none of the other ones would have happened? Something along those lines. Deep explanation. Okay, there are marks on the paper for how well you conclude, how well you make a judgment. Okay, so make sure you do that. Okay? So here's an example. Some might agree with the statement because of the introduction of the feudal system. I've made my point that agrees here. Okay? I'm saying what the feudal system is here. Okay, I'm saying what it is. I'm giving it some evidence. I'm not quite answering the question yet. I'm just showing off what I know. And then I'm explaining why this agrees with the statement. Why this Normanisation, so the feudal system was part of the Normanisation of England, made the king more powerful. So this feudal system is Normanising England, and I'm saying here why that made the king more powerful. Okay? So, good luck in your exams, whether it be mocks or real ones. Make sure you do plenty of other revision, but also make sure you understand how to answer the questions. I hope this has been useful. Goodbye.